Welcome back to our cozy forest adventures. Join our little forest friends as they embark on a brand new journey through the woods, discovering surprises, friendship, and tiny magical moments along the way. If you enjoyed this story, don't forget to like this video and subscribe to our channel for more heartwarming forest tales. Sweet dreams and happy listening. Stories from the woods. The market at the clearing. The morning sun poured a soft golden light over the forest, slipping gently between the branches of tall oaks and beeches. A crisp autumn breeze carried the scent of fallen leaves, chestnuts, and distant wood smoke. Today was not just any day. Today was the day of the forest market, held only once in a season, when animals from the north and south parts of the woods came together at the big clearing by the river bend. Hazel the rabbit was up early, tying a little ribbon around a basket brimming with small loaves of nutty bread. Pip, her brother, carried another basket with fresh blackberries glistening like tiny jewels. "Do you think I like our bread, Hazel?" Pip asked, ears twitching nervously. "Of course they will," Hazel replied cheerfully. "It's the forest market. Everyone brings something special, and everyone shares. That's the best part." Meanwhile, on the southern side of the woods, Oliver the mouse adjusted his little cart filled with warm apple pies. Millie, with a scarf tied around her neck, stacked jars of plum compote so carefully you'd think they were treasure. Mr. Badger came last, grunting happily as he carried 2 heavy jars of pickled vegetables in each paw. "Nothing like a good pickle to brighten a cold evening," he chuckled, setting them on the cart. By mid-morning, the clearing was alive with color and sound. Stalls made of wooden planks, old barrels, and woven baskets lined the edges. A soft murmur of chatter filled the air, mixed with the sweet notes of a bird singing on a nearby branch. The smell of baked bread, ripe fruit, and herbs wrapped the place like a blanket. Hazel and Pip stopped in wonder. They had never seen so many animals together at once. Squirrels with nuts tied in bundles, hedgehogs with jars of honey, and even a family of frogs who had brought a basket of cattail roots. "Come on, Pip," Hazel said, tugging his paw. "Let's find a spot for our bread." They set up their baskets beside Bramble the hedgehog, who was already arranging wedges of cheese on little wooden boards. He winked at them. "Ah, I said, Peep, you're just in time. Folks will want a slice of bread with their cheese." Not far away, Oliver and Millie arranged their pies and compotes. Millie brushed dust off the jars and hummed while Oliver carefully cut a pie to let the rich smell drift out. And then, without planning it, their eyes met across the clearing. Hazel noticed Oliver first, the small mouse standing proudly by his pies. Pip nudged her. "Who are they?" "I don't know," Hazel whispered back, "but their pies smell wonderful." Soon enough, curiosity carried them closer. Hazel, Pip, Bramble, and even little Lottie the mouse walked toward Oliver's stall. At the same time, Oliver waved Millie over. Mr. Badger lumbered behind, towering above them all. "Hello there," Oliver said warmly. "Would you like a slice of apple pie?" Hazel's nose twitched. "Yes, please. And maybe you'd like some of our bread." And just like that, the first exchange was made, a slice of pie for a loaf of bread. Millie giggled when she tasted Bramble's cheese and immediately offered him a spoonful of plum compote. Mr. Badger proudly presented his pickles, which Pip eyed suspiciously until he tried one, and then quickly reached for another. The market became a place not just of trading food, but of sharing laughter, recipes, and stories. Squirrels traded hazelnuts for honey, owls bartered herbs for jam, and frogs swapped cattail roots for pies. And among all the bustling, Hazel, Pip, Oliver, Millie, Bramble, and Mr. Badger realized they had found something more valuable than any trade: new friends from the other side of the forest. The sun dipped lower, painting the clearing in amber light, but the chatter and warmth showed no sign of fading. Somewhere between the stalls of bread and pie, a friendship was beginning that would carry them into many new adventures. Would you like me to keep this as one long, continuous festival day story, or split it so after the market scene They naturally branch into smaller, cozy adventures together, like exploring each other's parts of the forest, helping one another, etc. The afternoon sunlight slanted through the trees, casting dappled shadows across the clearing. The market was in full swing now, humming with laughter, chatter, and the occasional squeak or clink of jars being traded. The smell of warm pies mingled with the tang of Bramwell's cheese and the sweet scent of honeycomb from the Bee family stall. Somewhere, a bird was singing a cheerful tune, as though it too was part of the celebration. Hazel and Pip lingered near Oliver's pies, nibbling at their slices. Pip licked a bit of apple filling from his paw. "Hazel, I think this is the best thing I've ever eaten," he said with wide eyes. Oliver grinned. "It's the cinnamon. Millie says it makes the apples taste like sunshine." Millie blushed at the compliment, then handed Hazel a tiny jar of plum compote. "Here, try this on your bread. It makes a fine breakfast." Hazel's nose twitched as she spread some on her loaf. The taste was rich, sweet, and just a little tart. "Oh, Millie, this is wonderful. You must show me how you make it." Millie smiled shyly. "Of course. Maybe you could show me how to make bread in return." Bramwell the hedgehog chuckled, cutting a neat slice of cheese and placing it atop Hazel's compote bread. Bread, compote, and cheese. That's a proper feast right there. Nearby, Mr. Badger had drawn a small crowd. He was handing out samples of his pickled vegetables with a proud gleam in his eye. "Keeps you strong through the winter, this does," he boomed. "Nothing better on a cold evening than a pickle and some bread." Pip, emboldened by his earlier taste, piped up, "I think you're right. Could I maybe trade some blackberries for a jar?" Mr. Badger's eyes twinkled. "Done." He placed a heavy jar in Pip's paws, nearly making the little rabbit stagger backward. As the trades went on, the animals from the north and south began to mix more freely. A pair of squirrels from the north were teaching a family of frogs how to roast chestnuts over a small fire. An owl from the south carefully selected a bundle of herbs from Millie while offering dried mushrooms in exchange. The clearing buzzed with friendly energy. After a while, Hazel noticed Lottie, the mouse from the northern side, standing shyly at the edge of the group. She was clutching a basket of jars filled with jewel-bright jams. Hazel nudged her gently. "Why don't you show them what you've brought?" Lottie squeaked softly, but took a step forward. I have some jam. Raspberry, blackberry, and elderflower." Oliver's eyes lit up. "Elderflower? I've never tried that before." He took a spoonful and closed his eyes. "Oh, it tastes like summer mornings." Lottie's ears turned pink. "Would you like a jar?" Millie clapped her paws. "Yes, please. I'll trade you a compote." And so the circle grew wider, with more exchanges and laughter. Even Henry, the clumsy young hedgehog, managed to sell a few of his lopsided honey cakes after Bramwell gave him a nudge of encouragement. As the sun dipped lower, lanterns made from hollowed gourds were lit, their warm glow adding to the magic of the evening. The flickering lights reflected off the jars of jams and pickles, making the market look like a treasure trove. Hazel leaned back against the basket, nibbling bread topped with Bramwell's cheese and Millie's compote, and sighed happily. "I wish every day could be like this." Oliver nodded beside her. "Maybe it can't be every day, but perhaps we can visit each other between markets. There's so much to see in the forest." Hazel's eyes sparkled. "Yes, we could take turns showing one another our homes." Pip, already munching another pickle, added with his mouth full, "And we could share food too." Everyone laughed, and the sound carried through the clearing, mixing with the rustle of leaves and the soft hum of the river nearby. It was the beginning of something new, something that would last far beyond the end of the market day. As the lantern swayed gently in the evening breeze, Hazel, Pip, Oliver, Millie, Bramwell, Lottie, Henry, and Mr. Badger sat together in a little circle, sharing not just food, but stories and plans. And without realizing it, they had become more than just traders at a market. They had become friends. Continue with another story, yes, where they go explore an abandoned tower with many different things, and they find all kinds of stuff, but remember nothing hoed or things like that. The morning after the market, the forest felt different. It was as though the laughter and trading from the day before had left a soft hum in the air, like the echo of music after a festival. Hazel and Pip woke early, nibbling on leftover bread while watching the mist rise from the fields. Oliver and Millie, still glowing from their new friendships, walked with Mr. Badger along a winding path. Bramwell, Lottie, and Henry joined soon after, each carrying small satchels with bits of food tucked inside, cheese wrapped in cloth, a pie in a tin, a few jars of jam. "What shall we do today?" Pip asked, bouncing along the path. "Something fun." Hazel tilted her head. "Well, Oliver mentioned yesterday about a place at the edge of the woods, an old tower." Oliver's whiskers twitched. "Yes, my grandfather told me about it once. It's a stone tower that's been empty for many, many years. No one lives there now. He said it's full of old things, tools, pots, maybe even books. I've always wanted to see it." Millie clutched her scarf a little tighter. "Is it safe?" Mr. Badger let out a hearty laugh. "Safe enough. A tower's just stones and dust. Nothing to worry about, except maybe spiders." Henry made a face. "Spiders? Friendly ones," Hazel said quickly, smiling. "Come on, let's go have a look. Maybe we'll find something useful, or at least interesting." They set off together, the group growing noisier as they went. The forest stretched tall and green above them, the air fresh with the scent of pine and earth. Birds flitted from branch to branch, and a squirrel scolded them from a treetop before racing away. The path grew narrower as they neared the far edge of the woods. Soon, the trees thinned, and before them rose the tower. It was tall and round, made of gray stone, with ivy climbing high up its sides. The top was broken in places, as though storms had bitten at it over the years. A wooden door, crooked but still hanging, stood at the base. Everyone fell silent for a moment, staring. "It looks magical," Lottie whispered. "More like dusty," Bramwell said, though his eyes twinkled. Pip hopped forward eagerly. "Let's go in." With a creak and a push, the heavy door swung open, revealing a spiral of stone steps winding upward. The air inside was cool and smelled faintly of herbs, dust, and old wood. Sunlight filtered through cracks in the stones, casting stripes of light across the floor. They climbed slowly, paws echoing on the steps. The first room they found was filled with wooden shelves. Most were broken, but on them sat jars of dried herbs, still faintly fragrant when Millie lifted a lid. "Thyme," she whispered, her eyes wide. "And sage. Oh, these would be perfect for teas and soups." She carefully tucked a few sprigs into her satchel. Up another flight, they entered a larger room. Here, a table leaned against the wall, and scattered across it were faded scraps of parchment, quills, and a cracked inkpot. Hazel traced the lines of what looked like an old recipe, though the words were smudged. "A cookbook, maybe," she murmured. "Imagine the meals once made here." Further still, in a dusty corner, Pip found a basket filled with small wooden toys, tops, carved animals, and blocks. His eyes lit up as he spun one on the floor. "They still work?" Henry laughed and tried one himself, nearly knocking in a Bramwell, who grumbled but smiled as the toy wobbled across the stones. At the very top of the tower, the group stepped into a wide, airy space where half the roof had fallen away. From here, the view stretched far and wide. The forest rolled like a sea of green. The river sparkled like a silver ribbon, and in the distance, fields glowed golden under the sun. Everyone gasped. "It feels like you can see the whole world," Lottie said softly. Oliver leaned against the wall, gazing out with shining eyes. "This could be our meeting place. Whenever we want to gather, we could come here. It's halfway between north and south." Hazel's ears perked up. "Yes. And we could tidy it, make it cozy. Bring chairs, maybe hang lanterns. We could even store food for when we visit." Mr. Badger rumbled approvingly. "A fine idea. This tower isn't abandoned anymore. It's ours now." They sat together at the top for a while, sharing bread, cheese, and slices of pie from their satchels. The wind was gentle, carrying the scent of pine and the far-off sound of the river. Laughter filled the open air as Pip tried to balance a block on his head, and Millie read aloud bits of a faded recipe she'd saved. The tower, once silent and empty, now rang with voices and warmth. It was no longer just a ruin. It was the beginning of a home. The next morning, the forest stirred with quiet excitement. Hazel had risen early, already tying little bundles of bread and butter for the day. Pip scampered about, packing a jar of honey and some apples. "We'll need strength if we're cleaning a whole tower," he announced proudly, puffing out his chest. On the southern side, Oliver and Millie were preparing too. Oliver carried a bundle of old cloths for dusting, while Millie carefully wrapped sprigs of herbs to hang on the tower walls. Mr. Badger, of course, brought tools, an old hammer, some nails, and even a small saw balanced on his shoulder. By mid-morning, they were all gathered again at the foot of the tower. The crooked door groaned as they pushed it open, but this time the sound no longer felt eerie. It felt like the door was welcoming them back. "Right," Bramwell said, placing his paws on his hips. "If this is going to be our meeting place, we'll need to clean from top to bottom. Who's with me?" Everyone raised their paws. The work began. Dust flew into the air as Hazel swept the stone steps with a broom made of twigs. Pip carried broken bits of wood outside, stacking them neatly to be used later as firewood. Oliver climbed onto a stool to polish the wooden table in the second room, while Millie hummed softly, tying sprigs of thyme and rosemary to the walls. The herbs filled the tower with a warm, fresh scent. Lottie busied herself with the shelves, sorting through jars and deciding which herbs were still good. She carefully labeled them with scraps of parchment. "This one's mint," she explained, holding up a jar. "Perfect for tea." Henry, determined to be helpful, tried to carry a large share up the stairs, but nearly toppled backward. Luckily, Mr. Badger caught him with a steady paw. "Easy there, lad. Let's do it together." By midday, the tower was already looking brighter. Sunlight spilled across clean floors. The shelves were neatly arranged with jars and baskets, and the air was filled with the scent of herbs and fresh bread. Bramwell sliced a wedge of cheese, Pip spread honey over bread, and soon everyone was sitting in a circle on the floor, enjoying their lunch. "This feels like a holiday," Pip said happily through a mouthful of bread. "It feels like home," Millie added softly, looking around the room. After eating, they tackled the top room of the tower. The broken roof let in plenty of sunlight, but the floor was scattered with stones and bits of wood. Together, they cleared the space until only the wide view remained. From here, they could see the river winding far below, the market clearing in the distance, and the forest stretching endlessly in every direction. Hazel spread out a blanket, Bramwell set down a basket of food, and Oliver carefully placed a lantern in the corner. Millie hung a string of dried flowers across a beam, and Lottie arranged a little pile of wooden toys Pip had rescued. "There," Hazel said at last, hands on her hips. "Our very own gathering place." Mr. Badger gave a deep, approving nod. "A fine job, all of you. This tower will keep us safe, and it'll hold our memories." As the afternoon waned, they sat together once more, gazing out over the glowing forest. The wind tugged gently at their fur, carrying with it the scent of pine, earth, and the promise of many more days like this. Oliver leaned back with a sigh. "Do you think anyone else knows about this tower?" "Maybe," Hazel said, her eyes sparkling. "But it belongs to us now, and we'll make it into something special." The group fell quiet, content to watch the sun dip lower, painting the sky in strokes of gold and rose. Their laughter and chatter had filled the tower once more, and with every broom sweep, every nail hammered, and every jar set in place, the stone walls had stopped being empty. The tower had found its purpose again, and so had they. The following day, the tower was alive before the sun had fully risen. Birds sang in the trees, their calls echoing across the clearing, and the animals arrived one by one, carrying baskets, jars, and bundles under their arms. Hazel had decided that the best way to truly make the tower theirs was to share their first supper inside it. "Nothing too fancy," she said as she spread a blanket across the long wooden table, its surface newly polished by Oliver's careful paws. "But everyone brings something they love." Pip hopped in proudly, balancing a basket of apples. "I picked them myself. Try not to eat them all on the way here." He grinned, his whiskers twitching. Millie followed, her basket filled with round, soft bread rolls, their tops golden brown and sprinkled with seeds. "I woke before dawn to bake these," she explained shyly, setting them down. "They're still warm. Perfect for dipping into soup," Bramwell said, stomping in behind her with a heavy pot slung across his shoulder. "And luckily I brought soup." He placed the pot on the hearth at the far end of the room. A fire had been coaxed back to life in the old stone fireplace, crackling merrily and filling the air with the smell of wood smoke. Oliver and Lottie carried jars of pickled carrots and beets, setting them in a neat line on the shelves. "Something bright for the table," Oliver said, his small wings fluttering. Hazel, of course, had brought cheese, round of soft goat's cheese wrapped in cloth. "No supper is proper without cheese," she said firmly, slicing into one and letting the creamy scent fill the room. Even Henry contributed, lugging in a heavy jug of fresh water from the stream. He beamed as he set it down. Not as tasty as cheese or bread, but still important. Mr. Badger was the last to arrive, carrying a small crate of jars filled with blackberry jam. "For dessert," he rumbled. "Blackberries from the edge of the meadow. I picked them with care." Together, they set the table with everything they had gathered. Wooden bowls clinked softly as Bramwell ladled soup, thick with carrots, beans, and herbs, into each one. Pip tore pieces of Millie's bread and dunked them into the steaming broth, closing his eyes in delight. Hazel crumbled cheese over her bowl, and Oliver sprinkled in a pinch of dried thyme. The tower filled with the warm smell of herbs, soup, and fresh bread. The crackle of the fire mixed with the sound of spoons tapping and laughter bubbling from every corner. "This is it," Millie said softly, looking around the room. "This is what I imagined. Not just the tower," Bramwell added, raising his spoon. "A home for all of us. A place to return to after our adventures." They ate until their bowls were empty, then passed around slices of bread with blackberry jam. Pip smeared his whiskers with purple and laughed so hard Hazel had to fetch a cloth to wipe his face. Henry leaned back with a full belly, sighing happily. As night settled, they carried their bowls to the top of the tower and sat in a circle under the open sky. The stars blinked into view one by one, the air crisp and cool. A gentle wind rustled through the treetops below, carrying with it the scent of pine and earth. Oliver gazed at the sky, his feathers puffed with contentment. "From up here, it feels like the whole forest belongs to us." "It doesn't," Hazel said with a smile, "but this tower does, and we'll take good care of it." They sat together long after the fire had died, talking softly about what they might do next, exploring new places, collecting stories to tell, or simply meeting here again to share a meal. The tower no longer felt empty or forgotten. It was alive, filled with voices, warmth, and plans for the days ahead. When they finally drifted off to sleep, curled under blankets, the tower stood tall against the night, its stone walls echoing not with silence, but with laughter and dreams. And in that moment, it truly became theirs. Morning sunlight spilled through the tall windows of the tower, warming the stone floor where the animals stirred awake. The air smelled faintly of ashes from last night's fire, mixed with the lingering sweetness of blackberry jam. Hazel stretched, yawning, then reached for the round of cheese she had tucked away. It was still wrapped neatly in cloth, resting beside the bread basket that now held only crumbs. "Up, everyone," she called cheerfully, brushing crumbs from her fur. "We can't spend all day dreaming under blankets. We've got a tower now, and towers need plans." Pip rubbed his eyes, his ears flopping lazily as he sat up. Plans? What kind of plans? The sort that help us know where we are, Hazel explained. She patted toward the window, pointing to the wide forest stretching in every direction. Sunlight touched the treetops, making them shine like a sea of green and gold. From here, you can see almost everything. The river, the meadows, even the hills far off. If we made a map, this tower could be our guidepost. Oliver's feathers fluffed with excitement. A map? Oh, yes. I've always wanted one. Then I wouldn't get lost on misty mornings when the paths all look the same. Millie tilted her head. How would we make a map? None of us are cartographers. Bramble chuckled. We don't need to be. We just need sharp eyes, a steady paw, and some ink. He reached into his satchel, pulling out a half-empty notebook and a small pot of ink. I never travel without these. We can draw what we see. Mr. Badger, who had been quietly sipping a mug of nettle tea, rumbled his agreement. A fine idea. Maps are useful not just for finding places, but for remembering them. The forest changes, but paper does not. So the animals gathered at the top of the tower, each taking turns pointing out landmarks. From their high perch, the forest spread out like a storybook illustration. Pip leaned eagerly over the low stone wall, pointing with his paw. There's the bend in the river. See? The one where I fell in last spring. In the meadow beyond, Hazel added, where the clover grows so thick it tickles your nose. Lottie fluttered up to the highest edge, her tiny claws gripping the stone. Look there, near the horizon. That must be the eastern hill. My family used a nest close by. Bramwell sketched carefully, marking each detail with patience. The ink glistened in the sun as he worked, lines forming rivers, clusters for forests, small squares for meadows. It was rough at first, but soon it began to look like the world they knew. They worked all morning, only stopping when Pip's stomach growled loudly enough to make everyone laugh. Millie unpacked her small satchel, laying out bread rolls she had tucked away. Hazel sliced cheese thin, while Oliver offered dried herbs to sprinkle over the top. They ate sitting on the stone floor, crumbs scattering between the cracks. When the food was gone, Bramwell tapped the parchment with his quill. A map should hold not just places, but stories. Each spot means something to us. If we write notes, it becomes more than lines. It becomes memory. So they began to share. Pip told of the hollow log where he had hidden a stash of apples, only for Henry the Hedgehog to discover them and eat half. Millie spoke of the meadow where she learned to bake over an open fire, her first rolls coming out blackened but still edible. Hazel added a little star over the clearing where she found her first wheel of cheese abandoned by a passing farmer. Even Mr. Badger added his tale. Here, he said, pointing to the northern edge, is where the blackberry brambles grow thickest. That is where I make my jam each autumn. He drew a small berry cluster to mark the spot. As the map grew, so did their excitement. Soon, it wasn't just about where they had been, but where they might go. Lottie fluttered her wings eagerly. What lies beyond the hills? Do you think there are more towers or villages of animals we've never met? Hazel smiled, her eyes shining. That's the best part of maps. They show what you know, but also what you don't. And what you don't know, that's adventure. The group fell quiet for a moment, the weight of possibility hanging in the air. Sunlight warmed their fur and feathers, the wind brushing softly against their ears. It felt as though the whole forest was waiting, inviting them to step into its mysteries. But Pip was the first to break the silence, nibbling at a leftover crumb. I think our next adventure should be about finding chestnuts. My belly votes chestnuts. Everyone laughed, and the moment of heaviness passed. Bramwell carefully rolled up the new map and tied it with twine. For now, this is enough. But soon, we'll add more. Each journey we take, each story we make, it all belongs here. As the day waned, they descended from the tower top, their hearts full of ideas. They didn't yet know where their paws would lead them, but they knew the tower had become their compass. With a map in paw and stories on their tongues, The woods seemed wider, brighter, and more alive than ever before. That evening, as the sun dipped below the trees, Hazel whispered softly to herself, "This tower is not just a home. It's the beginning of everything." And indeed it was. The next morning dawned crisp and clear, with a cool breeze that rattled the leaves like soft applause. Sunlight poured through the tower's windows, spilling golden stripes across the floor where the animals were just waking. Pip yawned wide enough to make his whiskers tremble, then sniffed the air with sudden interest. "Is someone cooking breakfast?" he asked hopefully. Hazel laughed as she placed a small pot on the warm embers of last night's fire. "Not cooking, just warming honey water. We'll need our strength, because today we follow the map." "The brambles?" Bramble asked, reaching for his satchel. His eyes gleamed. "The brambles," Hazel confirmed. She unrolled their newly made map, smoothing it carefully across the wooden table they had dragged into the tower's kitchen. "Mr. Badger marked them here. If his tales are true, the berries are thick enough to stain your paws purple for a week." Mr. Badger chuckled deeply, his whiskers twitching. "True indeed, but the thorns are just as fierce. We'll need baskets, gloves, and patience." Pip clapped his paws together. "Berries mean pies, jams, tarts, and, oh, berries eaten straight from the branch." His belly gave a loud gurgle, as if to agree. By mid-morning, the group was ready. Millie tied small scarves over her paws to guard against thorns, while Hazel packed cheese and bread for the journey. Oliver balanced on Bramble's shoulder, carrying a tiny pouch of herbs just in case. Lottie fluttered around the group, chattering happily about all the things she would bake once they had berries. They left the tower and entered the forest, the map guiding their steps. Sunlight filtered through the canopy, painting shifting patterns on the mossy ground. The air was sweet with late summer scents, pine needles, damp earth, and the faint perfume of wildflowers still clinging to life. As they walked, the sound of a brook trickled nearby, mingling with the cheerful chirps of cicadas. Pip skipped ahead, chasing grasshoppers that leapt before him. Hazel called after him, "Don't go too far. Remember, the map says it's thick ground near the brambles." By midday, the trees thinned into a sunlit clearing, and there they were, sprawling walls of blackberry brambles, taller than Pip and wider than a cottage. The berries gleamed like jewels, glistening in the light, plump, purple, and impossibly inviting. Pip rushed forward with a squeak of joy, but yelped as a thorn snagged his ear. "Ow! Wicked plants!" he muttered, rubbing at it. "Told you," Mr. Badger said with a rumbling chuckle. He stepped forward, careful and steady. His thick fur and years of practice gave him confidence. With a practiced paw, he began filling his basket, slow and steady. Treat the brambles with respect, and they'll give you their best. Hazel and Millie worked side by side, sliding paws carefully between the thorns. Bramble used a stick to pull branches closer while Oliver and Lottie plucked berries from higher spots, fluttering and hopping along. Soon, baskets began to fill. The berries were so ripe that juice stained their paws and whiskers, leaving little purple smudges that made everyone laugh. "Look at Pip," Lottie cried, giggling. Pip had more berries in his mouth than in his basket, his cheeks bulging like a squirrel's. Testing them," Pip said, his words muffled by fruit. His face was sticky with juice, and he grinned, unashamed. By the time the sun dipped lower, the baskets were brimming. The air smelled sweet with berry juice, and the ground glittered with fallen fruit. They carried their bounty to a soft patch of grass nearby and settled down for a rest. Hazel laid out bread and cheese, which paired perfectly with the tart sweet berries. They ate until their bellies were full, laughing and swapping stories. After their meal, Bramble unrolled the map again, staining the parchment faintly with purple fingerprints. "Here," he said, marking the brambles with a small berry cluster. "Our first great addition. A place worth remembering." The others nodded in agreement, their hearts warm and content. But Hazel's eyes drifted toward the horizon. "Do you see that?" she asked softly. Beyond the brambles, far in the distance, rose a dark shape against the sky. It wasn't a tree or a hill. It was too tall, too narrow. A spire, Oliver whispered, his feathers ruffling. Mr. Badger nodded slowly. "Yes, I know of it. An old tower, though not like ours. Some say it was built long before any of us can remember. I've never been there myself." The group fell into thoughtful silence. The brambles had been exciting, but that distant shape pulled at them, promising mysteries far greater than berries. Pip, still licking juice from his paws, spoke first. "Well, we got a map now, don't we? Maps are for finding things. Let's find that tower." The others exchanged glances, their eyes shining with curiosity. A new adventure was waiting, just beyond the brambles. And this time, it wasn't food or comfort drawing them forward, it was wonder. They packed their baskets, tied the map with care, and began the slow walk back to their own tower. Evening shadows stretched long across the path, the wind whispering through the trees as if urging them onward. In their hearts, they knew tomorrow would bring something new, something unknown. The tower kitchen smelled of berries. Even though the baskets had been set neatly along the shelves, their sweet perfume filled every corner, mixing with the faint scent of smoke from the hearth. The animals were gathered around the table, where Bramwell had unrolled the map again. The parchment was already speckled with stains from cheese, crumbs, and now purple blotches from sticky paws. Hazel tapped the far-off mark where they had drawn the brambles. Beyond it, she had added a faint line to mark the silhouette of the spire they had seen. "There," she said firmly, "is where we're going next." Oliver tilted his head. "It looks far. Perhaps a full day's walk, maybe more." Mr. Badger nodded, his deep voice calm. "A wise guess. It lies in the northern stretch of woods. Few animals go that way. It's quieter, wilder. You won't find markets or cottages." That only made Pip's eyes sparkle brighter. "Perfect. That means fewer paws to get in our way." He leaned forward eagerly. "What do you think we'll find there? More maps? Hidden treasures? Maybe even another room full of barrels like the cellar here." Hazel chuckled. "If all you dream about is food, Pip, you'll never be disappointed." She brushed a paw over the map. "But I think it might hold something else. Maybe answers about who built these towers." Millie fiddled with her apron strings. "Do we really need to know who built them? Isn't it enough that we enjoy them?" Hazel smiled gently. "Perhaps, but don't you ever wonder? The tower we live in feels like it's waiting to be remembered. I think the spire might help us understand." The room fell quiet, the fire crackling softly in the hearth. Outside, the wind whistled around the tower walls, carrying the smell of pine and the distant hush of the river. It felt as if the whole forest leaned closer, listening. At last, Bramwell tapped his quill against the parchment. "If we're to go, we must prepare. It's not like berry picking, where you can turn home by evening. We'll need packs, blankets, extra food, and a way to mark the trail." "Jums," Pip said suddenly. Everyone turned to look at him. He sat up straighter, his ears twitching. "We got baskets of berries. If we turn them into jam, it'll keep for days. And jam goes well with bread, or cheese, or just by itself." Millie clapped her paws together. "That's a fine idea. We can make jars to carry with us." So it was decided. That very afternoon, they set about their preparations. The tower kitchen buzzed with activity. Hazel boiled the berries in a wide copper pot, stirring until the mixture bubbled and popped. The air grew thick with sweetness, the steam fogging the windows. Pip hovered close, sneaking taste with a wooden spoon until Hazel swatted him away. Millie tied cloths over small jars, sealing them with wax. "These will keep us well fed," she said proudly, lining them up on the counter like little jewels. Meanwhile, Bramwell sorted through his satchel, pulling out spare parchment, quills, and bits of twine. "To mark our trail," he explained, "and to record what we find." Oliver perched by the window, trimming small bundles of herbs. For colds, for cuts, and for courage, he murmured, tucking each bundle into a pouch. His feathers glowed golden in the firelight, his eyes calm but intent. Mr. Badger mended a canvas sack, his thick paws surprisingly gentle as he stitched. "We'll need this for whatever we bring back," he said, "and for carrying extra firewood if the nights grow cold." By evening, the tower looked more like a traveling shop than a home. Jars of jam, loaves of bread, wedges of cheese wrapped in cloth, dried herbs, flasks of honey water, and rolled blankets were neatly stacked by the door. But not everything was serious work. Pip, of course, turned the task into mischief. He draped a blanket over himself, stomping around the kitchen. "Behold, Pip the Explorer," he cried. "First of his kind. Finder of spires, eater of jam." Hazel laughed so hard she nearly dropped her ladle. Even Mr. Badger's whiskers twitched in amusement. "Careful, Explorer," he rumbled. "The jam may eat you first." As the last light of day faded, they gathered around the hearth, tired but satisfied. The wind outside had grown louder, rushing through the trees in low sighs. The fire's glow danced across their faces, painting them warm against the darkening stone walls. Hazel curled her paws around her mug of honey water, her gaze thoughtful. "Tomorrow, then," she said softly, "we'll follow the map, past the brambles toward the spire." A hush fell over the group, not fearful, but heavy with the weight of anticipation. Pip broke it at last with a grin. "I hope the spire has a kitchen. Imagine, pies taller than me." The others laughed, but their hearts were restless with curiosity. Tomorrow, they would leave the comfort of their tower for something unknown. And though they did not yet know what awaited them, they felt the promise of discovery in the air, as steady as the wind outside their door. That night, as they drifted to sleep, the map lay rolled on the table, a quiet reminder that the world was wider than they had ever dreamed. The forest was still when they left the tower at dawn. Mist curled low over the grass, dampening their fur and feathers, and the early sun burned pale through the trees. Each of them carried something. Bramble with his satchel of parchment and ink, Millie with jars of jam tucked in a cloth sack, Oliver with herbs tied neatly into bundles, Hazel balancing bread and cheese wrapped tight, and Pip lugging a basket that seemed far too big for his size. Mr. Badger walked at the back, steady as always, carrying a bundle of blankets and the heaviest pack without complaint. Their paws and claws crunched softly over the forest floor. Dew clung to every leaf, sparkling as the sun climbed higher. Birds called from the branches above, their songs bright and sharp in the cool air. The woods felt different here, less traveled, less known. The paths were narrower, twisting under archways of branches. Ferns grew thick, and moss covered fallen logs like soft green carpets. Pip ran ahead, his ears bouncing with each step. "Look at that spider web," he squeaked, pointing to a delicate web strung between two ferns, dotted with tiny drops of dew that shone like pearls. "It's a jewel net. Maybe we should take it for treasure." Hazel shook her head with a smile. "Some treasures are best left where they belong." Bramble stopped now and then to scratch notes on a parchment, marking where certain trees bent or where the brook cut across their path. Oliver fluttered down beside him. "Careful," the owl murmured. "If you mark every tree, you'll need more parchment than we brought." But Bramble only grinned. "The forest is a story. I don't want to miss a single word of it." By mid-morning, they came to the brook. Its water rushed fast over smooth stones, laughing softly as it ran toward the river. The group paused to drink and rest. Millie set out a small cloth and placed slices of cheese and a loaf of bread upon it. The air filled with the simple comfort of food, and soon crumbs scattered between them. Pip smeared jam thickly onto his slice, leaving sticky stains on his fur. "I like adventures," he said with his mouth full, "but I like lunches on adventures best." Afterward, they crossed the brook by stepping carefully over stones. The water tugged at their paws, cool and clear, carrying away leaves and twigs. On the other side, the woods grew darker. Tall pines rose close together, their branches swallowing much of the sunlight. The ground smelled sharp and clean, thick with needles. It was quieter here, the kind of quiet that pressed into ears. Only the wind sighed through the treetops, deep and low. Pip's cheerful humming softened, and even Hazel walked a little closer to the others. Mr. Badger noticed. He slowed his steps, his deep voice steady. Don't fret. The deeper woods are no foe. They're simply older, more thoughtful. Tread kindly, and they'll welcome you. They did tread kindly. Pip stopped to help a beetle turn upright. Millie brushed moss from a small stone carving that lay forgotten beneath a tree, and Hazel whispered thanks whenever they picked a handful of wild herbs. The woods seemed to watch, then slowly offered small gifts. Sunlight breaking through in golden beams, a patch of mushrooms clustered around a log, and the soft sound of water in the distance. By afternoon, they found the source of the sound, a wide pond, ringed with reeds and lilies. Dragonflies darted across the surface, their wings flashing blue and green. The group set their packs down with relief, stretching their paws. The water mirrored the sky, so still it seemed like glass. Pip leaned dangerously over the edge, peering at a fat frog on a lily pad. "Hello there, Sir Frog. Do you know the way to the spire?" The frog only blinked and slipped silently into the water. Pip sighed. Not very helpful. Hazel dipped her paw in the pond. "The water's cool. Let's fill our flasks before we go on." While they worked, Oliver stood on a rock, gazing across the water. His feathers ruffled slightly in the breeze. "Do you see that?" he asked softly. Across the pond, just barely visible through the reeds, was a tall shape in the distance. A point rising above the trees. The spire, Bramble breathed, his eyes wide. It looked impossibly far still, a dark finger scratching at the sky. But now it wasn't just a shadow from the tower window. It was real, waiting, watching. Millie pulled her scarf tighter around her paws. "It feels strange, knowing it's there, like it's been waiting for us." Hazel smiled, though her heart gave a little skip. "Then we won't keep it waiting." She pointed to the narrow deer path winding past the pond. "That way. If the map is true, it will take us closer." They set off once more, the spire now their constant companion in the distance. The woods thickened, shadows deepening as the sun slid lower. Their paws grew sore, and the packs felt heavier, but no one complained. Curiosity pulled them forward. By the time evening came, they found a hollow beneath an old oak tree and decided to camp. Mr. Badger gathered fallen branches for a small fire, while Millie laid out bread and jam. The flames crackled, chasing shadows away, and the group huddled close, their faces warm in the glow. As they ate, Bramble unrolled the map again and marked the pond with a careful circle. "Another step closer," he said, smiling. The wind whispered through the branches, soft as a lullaby. Beyond the trees, the spire loomed faintly against the twilight sky, patient and silent. Hazel pulled her blanket close, her voice quiet but firm. "Tomorrow, we reach it." Everyone nodded, and in the hush of the deep woods, with the crackle of fire beside them and the promise of the spire ahead, they drifted into dreams of what tomorrow might bring. The forest seemed to sense their purpose the next morning. Sunlight filtered through the branches in long beams, striping the ground with gold. Birds stirred in the canopy, calling one another with clear whistles. The air was fresh and cool, carrying the faint tang of pine sap and wet moss. Hazel woke first. She rose quietly, stretching her paws, and listened to the breathing of her friends. Pip was curled into a ball under his blanket, his whiskers twitching in some lively dream. Bramble had fallen asleep on his parchment, ink smudged across his nose. Oliver's feathers ruffled gently with each breath, and Millie's scarf had slipped halfway off, her paws tucked close. Mr. Badger lay steady as a stone, snoring softly, his deep chest rising and falling. Hazel smiled. She didn't wake them right away. Instead, She walked a little into the clearing and watched the morning unfurl. The mist was thinner here, already lifting. Beyond the trees, through the faint blue haze of distance, the spires still rose, silent and dark. Her heart gave a small skip. They were nearly there. Soon, the others stirred. Pip was the first up, blinking sleepily before bounding over to Hazel. "We'll get there today, won't we?" he squeaked. "Yes," Hazel said softly. "We will." They ate a simple breakfast of bread and berries, then packed their things. Mr. Badger shouldered the heaviest load again, refusing any argument. "I've carried worse in my day," he said with a grunt, though his eyes twinkled. The path wound deeper, and the trees grew stranger the closer they came to the spire. They were tall and thin, their bark pale, their branches twisting like old hands. The wind made them creak softly, as if whispering secrets to each other. The group walked in silence for a while, each of them listening. Pip broke it at last. "Do you think anyone lives in the spire?" "Not anymore," Bramble murmured, looking down at his map. "It's old, older than anything I've seen. But that doesn't mean it holds nothing." Millie shivered. "As long as it's not holding trouble." By midday, they reached a ridge, and there it was, closer than ever. The spire rose from a low hill, its stones dark and weathered, vines clinging to its sides. It wasn't as grand as the tower they had explored before, but it was taller, sharper, a needle pointing at the sky. At its base lay ruins, broken walls half swallowed by earth, bits of old stone steps, and the remains of what must once have been a gate. Grass grew through the cracks, and wildflowers brightened the gray stone. Pip gasped. "It's beautiful, like a giant's castle, all crumbled down." Hazel set her paw on the stone, running her fingers over the grooves. They were worn smooth with time, yet still strong. "It's waiting," she said. They stepped carefully into the ruins. Birds burst from the grass as they passed, startled into the air. Bees hummed among the flowers, unbothered by the intruders. There was a peace here, but also a weight, as if the place carried every story it had ever known. Inside, they found a wide space where walls had once stood. At the center was the spire itself, rising straight up with a single narrow door at its base. The door was crooked and heavy, made of ironwood, gray with age but still holding fast. Mr. Badger pushed at it. The hinges groaned, stiff with rust, but slowly the door gave way. The inside smelled of stone and dust, cool and dry. A narrow spiral stair wound upward into the dark. Light filtered in from small slits in the walls, striping the stairs with pale beams. "Well," Bramble said, trying to sound steady though his voice wavered with awe, "shall we?" Up they went. Their paws and claws clattered softly on the steps, the sound echoing upward. The stair turned and turned, tighter and tighter, until Pip grew dizzy. "Does it go up forever?" he puffed. "Not forever," Oliver answered calmly, "but far enough." At last, they reached the top. The stair ended at a wide, round chamber, its walls lined with tall, arched windows. Sunlight streamed in, filling the room with light. Dust motes drifted lazily in the beams, and the air smelled faintly of wild herbs, as if the wind carried them in from the fields below. In the center stood a great table of stone, cracked down the middle, but still strong. On it lay objects scattered by time, broken pottery, faded cloth, a few rusty tools. And in one corner, surprisingly untouched, was a small wooden chest. Pip ran to it at once. "Treasure," he cried. "Wait," Hazel said, but Pip was already tugging at the latch. It creaked, stiff with age, then popped open. Inside were scrolls, dozens of them, rolled neatly and bound with faded ribbon. Bramble's eyes widened. He stepped forward reverently, lifting one scroll with trembling paws. "These are maps," he whispered. "Old maps. Look, see how the rivers run differently, how the hills are drawn. This is the forest long ago." Oliver leaned over, his keen eyes scanning the ink. And not just maps. Notes, drawings of plants and animals. Records. Someone kept watch here. Hazel touched one scroll gently. It's like they were trying to remember everything. To keep it safe. Millie's eyes softened. Maybe they wanted someone like us to find it. They gathered around the table, unrolling the scrolls carefully, their eyes wide with wonder. Pip traced lines with his paw, though Bramble quickly shooed him away before sticky jam fingers could smudge the ink. As the sun sank lower, golden light poured through the windows. The group sat together, reading, dreaming, imagining the lives of those who once climbed these stairs. At last, Hazel spoke. These maps, these records, they don't belong to the spire anymore. They belong to the forest. We should share them with everyone. Mr. Badger nodded. Knowledge is meant to be carried forward, not locked away. They packed the scrolls carefully into Bramble's satchel, handling them with great care. The spire, empty now, seemed to sigh around them, as if glad to be unburdened. As they descended the stairs, Pip skipped a little despite the weight of his basket. Just think, he said, his voice bright, we came all this way, and the spire gave us stories. Hazel smiled, the satchel heavy at her side. And stories, she said softly, are treasures worth any journey. They stepped out into the fading light. The spire stood tall behind them, shadow stretching long across the ground. Ahead, the path wound back toward the heart of the forest. The air smelled of grass and pine, and a gentle breeze stirred, carrying with it the promise of new journeys yet to come. The end. Bye-bye. Thank you for joining us on our adventure. If you enjoyed this story, check out our channel for more magical forest tales and cozy adventures waiting just for you. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and come back soon for the next story.